Harley Scarduelli. He is the CFO of Gerdau. Harley, it's so great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Very good to see you, Judy, as well. Thank you very much for having me here.
It's a pleasure. Now, a quick note to our viewers before we get started. This interview is for informational purposes only. The NYSE doesn't recommend any investments or investment strategies. Now, Harley, tell me, how has the pandemic affected your company?
Well, great question. The question of the moment, right, Judy? We were, I would say, very quick trying to react when we first had the effects of the pandemic back in late March, early April, right? We very quickly were, looking very seriously into our cash position, how our liquidity was, how our operation would react, and of course, first and foremost, right, we were very concerned about the health and safety of our people, right? So we did also took a lot of measures, to make sure that everybody that could go to work, would be, in very healthy conditions, following the protocols that the different regions and governments, right, put in place, because we have operations in 10 countries, right? So we were affected differently in each one of those countries. But I would have to say that the flexibility that we have in our production base, right, helped us a lot during those, especially during those first, weeks of the crisis.
Okay. Now, Harley, tell me, what are some of Gerdau's recent initiatives to overcome the challenging scenario faced by global markets?
Yes, well, we were, first of all, we had to shut down, at least for a couple of weeks, some of our operations, especially in Brazil, right? Because there was a lot of restrictions in terms of, people being able to, to go to work, I have to make sure that we have all the protocols in terms of health, right, being supplied, right? So that was the first reaction. But again, we have a lot of flexibility in our business model. We are a big recycler of scrap, right? In our business, we also have the integrated routes. So we were able actually to shuffle production between our different units that we have to make sure that we could cope with that, making sure that we could supply our customers that needed our products. And I think we were successful, about doing that.
Okay, and how has your company contributed to society during this time?
Yeah, this was also, very important point. Society as a whole suffered a lot with this crisis, right? We tried really to help where, especially where we felt that the help was more needed, right? So we very quickly were able to help society with building 2 hospitals dedicated to COVID. There were actually COVID treatment centers in 2 big cities in Brazil, in São Paulo and Porto Alegre. Those 2 hospitals are actually, after the crisis, is gone, or as soon as possible, we hope, right? That's going to be left as a legacy for those hospitals, going to be incorporated into those hospitals, right? And we're talking about 160 beds for the treatment of COVID. And we were able to do that with steel structure, so it's a product that we also supply, for the construction of those hospitals. And those hospitals were actually put, in place in 30 days. Okay, so it's very, very quick. Okay, and we hope this will help alleviate the effects, of course, of this terrible crisis.
Yes, indeed. Now, finally, Harley, ESG, it's a topic which has gained importance among investors. How does Gerdau see this demand and its own sustainability journey?
Yes, this topic is becoming more and more relevant, not only for investors, right, for society as a whole. We view this as there's no turning back, right? This is very important. Society is demanding this from all the companies, right? So to be able to actually operate as a company, you're going to have to make sure that you go through, the best practices in terms of environment, social aspects and governance. We have, since last year, made our strategic committee, which is a committee within the board, right, become the strategic and sustainability committee. Okay, so it's part of the agenda of that committee that meets every month. Okay, to look into those factors. We are an industry, right? Still, industries traditionally, of course, have to be very much concerned about, especially carbon emissions, right? And we think we have a very good story to tell because, as I mentioned before, a big portion of our production is actually recycling the scrap. So we are a big recycler. We also in Brazil do also make steel out of iron ore, and a portion of that production is what we call blast furnaces that use charcoal instead of metallurgical coal. And we have our own reforestation projects to supply the wood for the charcoal, right? So we actually have a lot of credit in terms of carbon because of that. So we take that those topics very seriously. It is in the agenda of our boards, and we're very committed to that, to those topics. And as you started your question, right, investors are more and more demanding companies to make sure that they are socially, environmentally, and governance responsible, right? So it is a big trend.
Great. Well, Harley, it's been so wonderful to talk with you, and I want to thank you for joining me on NYSE Floor Talk.